It's not going through. What do you think he wants? I think that we're being studied.
Let's talk about the film Heretic, which is the latest film from A24, which I got the chance to watch at TIFF, and I rewatched it again at an early screening last week because I just didn't know how to feel about it, right? So this is a movie I was very on the fence with, and I watched it again, and I feel a little bit more better with it now that I watched it, and I think I watched it with a better mood. So you can check out my review if you don't want spoilers, but this is going to be spoiler full. We're going to talk about the ending and everything that came through. So before we get into it, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, follow us on Instagram or wherever you can. I'll leave all the links below, but let's get into Heretic, which is a film directed by Scott Beck and Bryan Woods. Now this film stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. Basically it says, when two missionaries of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints attempt to convert a reclusive Englishman, it turns out to be far more dangerous than they could have expected. So I went into this wondering what exactly Heretic was going to deliver. Was it just going to be a theological back and forth between Hugh Grant and Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, or was there going to be something hidden deep, dark, and twisted? And indeed, something was hidden. So we're about to get into spoilers. Like I said, spoiler free talk about the film over on my review. So you have about a couple of seconds, but let's get into the whole ending of Heretic. So pretty much what we see here happen is that Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton are going around trying to talk to people, as you see like different missionaries do throughout in our society. And they ultimately end up at Mr. Reed's house, who is this person that's very interested in religion and is a very much so expert on theology. He knows about all the different religions, from Judaism to Christian to also Islam and all of that. And he's so versed in it that he knows a bit more about Mormonism and all of that than he's leading on from the beginning. And ultimately this leads into him talking about how do you know exactly what is the right religion. And he starts talking about iterations, bringing up analogies of how things ultimately get washed down and they get repackaged and sold to people, and how some things are more popular than the other. Like he compares Monopoly to the Landlord's Game and how the Monopoly is more popular than that, or Radiohead's Creep in terms of the Foley's original song, which wasn't as big as Creep, but ultimately we saw that they adapt from each other and move on from them. So ultimately he says, I want to put you two to the test and your belief, so I want you to choose a door. I'm not going to let you leave through how you came. You have to see if your belief is strong. Of course Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton do not want to do any of this. This man is insane, but there's no choice. He's locked the doors, there's no reception for them, and they just don't know what's going to happen. Ultimately he lured them in by them thinking that he had a wife who was baking blueberry pies, but that wasn't the case. He actually just had a candle. By the way, we had blueberry pies at the screening for my movie, so that was very much so something I enjoyed about that. Now what leads into both of these doors, however, is just the same old result: a basement that is dark and there's nowhere to escape, and now Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton are trapped here, and he says that they will experience a miracle, but he needs witnesses to witness this as well, so the miracle can be recorded in history. Ultimately a very old looking woman comes out, and I was just thinking, are we about to get a barbarian like type scenario here? But he says that this woman is a prophet that can resuscitate, she can resurrect, and he gives her a blueberry pie that is poisoned, and we see that this woman then dies. They however are waiting to see for her to get up again and resuscitate, but that is when their Mormon elder comes to look for them, as they didn't report back, and he's been looking everywhere they were going to go. And of course Mr. Reed's house was on the list for them, so he goes and asks Mr. Reed what's happening. They ultimately try to get the attention of the elder. They're still locked in the basement, but they try to start a fire in order to get the alarm going and also scream, but they cannot be heard, and the Mormon elder leaves. As they return back to the basement, they see that the woman starts to come back to life, but Sister Paxton doesn't really believe this was the same woman and says that she actually moved and is in a different position now. The woman then explains that she saw clouds and angels, a conductor, but ultimately at the end said it isn't real, which really sticks to Sister Paxton, as she's not really convinced that all of this is real. But before they can do anything, we see that Mr. Reed then kills Sister Barnes by slashing her throat and saying that she will resuscitate, but then she doesn't resuscitate. What we see happen, however, is he says that she is an NPC, that because this is all a simulation, and that Sister Paxton is real, so if she kills herself she'll be able to come back. But Sister Paxton isn't convinced, even though Mr. Reed pulls out a piece of metal out of Sister Barnes' arm, Sister Paxton says that is just a contraceptive. You just are making up things on the fly right now. And Sister Paxton says she realizes what may be going on now. She then explains that Mr. Reed has probably been planning everything, even from the Mormon elder coming to knock on the door to create a distraction for both of the sisters to run up the stairs. And this was the moment when another woman that looks the same like the woman that's dead now switched the bodies in order for her to pretend that she is resurrected, and then thus maybe tricking both of them into thinking this actually works, and they would ultimately kill each other because he wanted to show that he had control of them and how he is very much so on top of all of this. He is then able to find the cages where he is keeping all of these women, and he pretty much says that yeah, everything has been calculated from the beginning, because the true religion of them all that rings true all this time throughout all of the ages is control, and that's exactly what he's been doing. She, however, says that he wasn't planning on one thing, and he stabs him with the letter opener they had gotten from the beginning as she runs up to try and escape. Then he catches up in time to stab her in the stomach, and just as he's about to kill her, we see Sister Barnes get up and hit him with a wooden plank with nails on it, killing him. And we see that then Sister Barnes just falls and dies finally. Sister Paxton is able to escape as she finds a window that she's able to get out, and as she lands on the snow, a butterfly lands on her, which is pretty interesting to note because it was something that Sister Paxton had talked about, that when she died or her loved ones or all of that died, that it would be a butterfly that would come back to showcase that yes, I am okay. I think it's an interesting note because you can interpret it in many ways. You could think about it in a way that maybe this is Sister Barnes manifesting to Paxton that she is okay now because she is that butterfly, and Sister Barnes had heard that Paxton said that about the butterfly. So it's an interesting take right there, but also you can kind of see it that maybe Sister Paxton is dead now. Maybe Sister Barnes didn't come back to life, and this is actually how heaven looks because of the snow and everything. And I think that's another interesting take as well, because you could definitely see it in many ways. Is Sister Barnes coming back to life seemingly after bleeding out on the floor for a bit now a way of a miracle, or is that all in Sister Paxton's head that this is something that happened, but indeed Mr. Reed actually killed her? I think that's an interesting thing. And I want to talk about this little quote right here that Hugh Grant had with Gaines Radar, where he talked about two separate endings apparently for Mr. Reed. He went on to say, there's a moment where I crawl across the floor to her, having been stabbed, which I did in two ways. One where he's still trying to make the whole thing fun, as he's trying to make the whole evening fun. He's kind of going, look at this is fun, dying. And then I did another one where all of his defenses have gone, and he's absolutely shitting himself that he's going to die, and he's very frightened. He wants some comfort, and he wants her to comfort him, perhaps with a prayer. I'm not entirely clear the way they edited which of those two performances they're going for. I think it's the latter, but I know they telescoped the last 20 minutes quite a lot. The film was running long, so maybe it's not quite clear. I quite like the second way. Finally, after a whole hour and a half of this guy totally being in control, he's a frightened rabbit, which I think is an interesting take, as well as we know we did hear Mr. Reed ask Sister Paxton to pray for them both as they were dying seemingly, and she says that she knows that prayer doesn't work, but it's crazy that you would still pray for someone as despicable like Mr. Reed as she starts to pray, which I think is an interesting aspect about the film as well. Mr. Reed questioned all of this, but he never understood their faith and why they believed in it, because yes, you can get to the text, to the root of it all, but at the end of the day you can't quantify or really put into words why people really believe and have this like faith, or as he wanted to say, blind faith as well, which I thought was an interesting aspect about the film. So I think the ending can be interpreted in many ways depending on how you view religion and faith and all of that, and I don't think one way or the other is the wrong way, which I really liked about the ending, is that it really leaves it up to the viewer. I think it's interesting that the butterfly does disappear, and it almost makes it seem like there wasn't a butterfly at all. I do wonder what the whole thing with the filmmakers was for that, but we'll definitely talk about that if they try to discuss their ending as well in another video. But let me know what you thought about the ending of Heretic and all of that. As I said, in the end, Mr. Reed was trying to basically have these two girls kill themselves in order to prove his point that religion is all about control, and that he was able to manipulate their feelings with all of these different things like the blueberry pie at the beginning, because they never questioned if there really was someone, and they could have all this time questioned it all, right? But they were just going along because this was sort of the blind faith they had, and that's what his whole thing that he was trying to prove here. The women he's keeping captive, I think, are another religion control game he's got going, because he has them believe believing that he is going to get them closer to God, and these women's faith is so strong that they truly believe this, and that makes him feel a bit more in power as well. So I think it's an interesting film about control, power, religion, dynamics, and things like that, and there's a lot more to discuss, and we can definitely get into the themes and all of that about it if y'all want, if you want to talk more about the religion and all of that. So stay tuned for that video, but let me know what you think about the ending, if you like this movie or not, and all of that. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram, our also Twitter, TikTok, all that, as well as our website, and I'll see all of you next time. As always, stay safe, stay positive.